welcome to you all. This is Teacher Webinar 11, and today's topic is turning challenges into opportunities. So this is the fifth part in our series on cultivating entrepreneurial mindsets and preparing young people for the future, a journey from business idea to plan. If you've been with us before, you'll know these webinars are brought to you by Teach a Man to Fish. We are an educational charity based in the United Kingdom whose mission is to empower young people with the skills that they need to succeed in school, work and life. My name is India Jankel, and it was Susanna who was speaking just a moment ago. So just before we start, I'll quickly share some basic housekeeping for today's session. So normally in a workshop, I would ask you to turn off your phones. Obviously, that wouldn't put us in a great position today. But it would be good if you could just close any unnecessary applications, your emails and so on. And you'll notice that you're all on mute at the moment. I just kindly ask you to remain muted throughout the session unless I invite you to share. That way it will make sure that everyone can hear each other speaking. And although we're not together in person, there are still plenty of ways that I invite you to participate fully. So at any point, you're welcome to leave comments and ask questions in the chat box, which you're using at the moment to introduce yourselves. You can also click the icons at the bottom of the page to show me how you're feeling. So you can give a thumbs up or a thumbs down, ask me to speak more quickly or more slowly. And we'll also be using polls, which will appear on screen, and breakout rooms, which I will explain a bit later on when we get to them. So the contents for today's session, it's going to be about 1 hour as usual. And in the next hour, we will be looking at an introduction to the School Enterprise Challenge, which we'll be doing through a video. Then we will move on to look at competitor analysis. So what it is, why it's such an important step in the business planning process, and how to carry one out. And then we will be looking at SWOT analysis, again, how to carry one out, and what you can learn from your SWOT analysis to strengthen your business strategy. And there'll be plenty of time for questions, interactive games, and reflection in groups at the end. And as always, after the session, I will share with you a link to a survey which you can complete to get your certificate of attendance. And I will also be sharing these slides by email, so no need to take notes of everything on screen. So before we dive into the tools and activities, which we'll be talking about in today's webinar, I just wanted to briefly introduce you to the School Enterprise Challenge for those of you that haven't taken part before or aren't too familiar with what it is. So I'll start by opening a quick poll, and you can just vote on screen to let me know, have you taken part in the School Enterprise Challenge before or not? And we can see who we've got with us today. Okay, so about half of you have voted already. Majority say yes, but it's a bit of a mixed bag. The yes is creeping up. Okay, so about 3/4 of you have taken part, which is great. For those of you that haven't though, I wanted to show you this video so you can see what the program is all about. And for those of you that have taken part, hopefully you'll still find it really inspiring. It's filmed with some of our participants in South Africa. So I'll leave the poll up for you to carry on voting if you haven't yet, and we'll have a quick look at this introductory video.
Young man, young woman, young African. You are the heartbeat that sings of self-sufficiency, of entrepreneurship, and of possibility. When you say, I can contribute, I will create, You shape your own destiny and empower yourself to become an agent of social change.
This participation in school business will help me to start my business.
An educational innovation known as the School Enterprise Challenge is sparking thousands of young risk takers to participate in real businesses at school.
Ngimbona imsiza kakhulu umthandi school business ngoba ukusizakala kwakhe lapha esikoleni kuba umntwana ohlala ebhizi la ekhaya kangangokuthi nami uma ngabe ebuya uba usizo kukhulumile nama ngibuya nokwami sihlale futhi naye nabafowabo abe number 1 engiziseni lezinto lesengizifunayo zakuma-businesses.
The School Enterprise Challenge is an educational-based business program designed by the NGO Teach a Man to Fish. The program supports teachers and learners in the process of starting and running a business at school. It's easy to get started. Register and gain access to the business guides, templates, and videos. The resources will help guide you through the program's 3 simple steps.
Okay, I'm gonna leave the video there because we've got quite a lot to get through today, but it's really nice at the end. The students are talking about what they've learned from the program, so please do check out the whole video when I send the slides round later on. So now that you all know what the School Enterprise Challenge is and how it works, we are going to come back and review where we got to at the end of webinar 10 and how that brings us to today's topic. So in webinar 10, from business idea to action, we looked at how your students can put their business idea to the test through prototyping, so making models of their product or service, and how they could gain valuable feedback on their business idea and prototype through carrying out market research by interviewing potential customers. So these activities will give students a really good understanding of their target market, what type of people will buy their product or service. And they'll also have some ideas from their market research interviews of why those people will choose their business over others. But they don't yet have the full picture because market research really has 3 aspects to it. And they are customers, your competitors, and your business idea. So now that your students have done the research on their customers, in this webinar, we will be exploring how your students can understand their competitors to figure out how they can beat them and identify their strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And after that, they will have a really solid understanding of their position in the market, what makes them unique, and of course, they will already have thought about how to overcome the weaknesses and threats, all of which will put them in a really great position to launch a successful school business. So let us start now by taking a look at what a competitor analysis is and how your students can carry it out. So an easy question to start off with, who knows what a competitor is? How would you define what a competitor is? I'd love to hear your thoughts if you'd like to share them in the chat box now. Yeah, exactly. So Nitin says the one who is dealing in the same kind of product. That's exactly right. So competitors are the people who sell the same or a very similar product or service as you do. And doing a competitor analysis will help your students to find out the strengths and weaknesses of their competitors and also help them decide on how to make their product or service different and special than the ones that are already on sale. So now that your students will be clear on the definition of what a competitor is, the next step will be to get them to brainstorm who their competitors are. And your competitors will be mostly local businesses, unless you're planning on selling only online beyond your local area. In the School Enterprise Challenge Business Guide number 5, you will find a competitor analysis table with a list of questions which we are going to go through in a moment, which will help to structure your students' research on their competitors. And in order to answer the questions about their competitors, your students will, of course, need to go out and do some research. And it's so important that they do actually carry out this research and make sure that their competitor analysis is based on real, up-to-date facts and figures, not guesswork. So there are different types of data that your students can collect about their competitors. The main ones being recorded data. So that's things that's available in published form, like annual reports, product brochures. Oftentimes only larger businesses will have these. Then there is observable data. So this is all the things that your students can actually go out and see with their own eyes. It's the things that your competitors will make obvious, like the prices on their products, their adverts and promotions. And then finally, there's opportunistic data. So this is what usually comes from discussions that you have with people that are connected both to your business and your competitors. So your customers primarily. So as you can see, there's so many different sources of information about your competitors, from the prices displayed in their shop to their website, if they have one, to how their customers talk about them, which you can, of course, find out by referring back to your market research interview results. So having explained to your students what a competitor and a competitor analysis is and where they can find the information, then the next step will be to go out and do this research and answer the competitor analysis questions, which I mentioned earlier and which we will go through together now. So there are 12 questions to answer, and each of them will give you clues as to how you could make your business stand out from your competitors. So the first question is, where is the competitor located? So think about how close your competitors are located to their target market, and if you could locate your business differently to reach your target market more easily. The second question is, what product or service do they sell? So is it exactly the same as yours? And if it is, how might you be able to adapt your product or service to make it different, to offer something different that your customers want? So again, a really good place to refer back to is the results from your empathic interviews and your market research results. So how could you differentiate your product or service from what's already on the market? The third question is, what are your competitors' prices? So this will prompt you to think about how you might be able to sell your product or service at a lower price than your competitors and still make a profit. The fourth question is, what are their operating hours? So here you can think about if you could benefit and reach more customers by being open at a different time, so earlier or later in the day or on weekends maybe, to reach the customers which your competitors can't. Then moving on, we have got who are their customers? So are you aiming for exactly the same customers or target market, or is there something about your product or service which will appeal to different customers? And this builds on the question of how your product or service offer something different to what is already available and will help your students to carve out their niche. After that, you'll ask or think about what marketing methods your competitors use. So if you plan to use the same ones, like say adverts and events, how could you make yours stand out? Or are there any other marketing methods or channels, like say social media, which you could take advantage of, which your competitors aren't using? The next thing to ask is how your competitors are trying to develop or expand their businesses. This is the information which will help you to future-proof your business, and think about what you need to do to remain competitive in the future. Next, we have whether they have a good reputation locally or not. So why or why not do you think that your competitors have a good reputation? And crucially, what could your students learn from that? So what factors like, say, quality products, good customer service, would your students need to consider to develop a good reputation too? And then for the final 4 questions, we have, do they offer any extra services, like say home delivery? And are these things that you should consider for your business to make it competitive? Or are there any different services that you could offer to stand out from the crowd? Next, we have, what are your competitors' strengths? So again, similar to the reputation question, what could you learn from your competitors' strengths and what they're doing well, without copying them too closely, of course? And then the opposite of that, what are their weaknesses? Bearing in mind that your competitors' weaknesses, they're an opportunity to become your school business's strengths. And finally, what is your competitor's unique selling point, or USP? Because you need to understand your competitor's unique selling points so that you can make sure that your own is truly unique. So those are the 12 questions, and your students can present their answers in a competitor analysis table, like this example, which I will show you on screen now. So you can write the questions or the themes that we've just been through on the left-hand side. This is just a sample, so this is, there's only 4 questions here, but you would have a bigger table with all 12 questions. And then you would have a column with the answers for each of your main competitors. And it is also important to answer the same questions about your business too. And that way you can see side by side the differences and similarities between your business and the other similar ones which you'll be competing against. And a top tip, I encourage your students to be as specific as they can in their answers. So for example, instead of writing that their competitors have low prices, be specific about exactly what prices they charge. Or instead of writing, yes, they have a good reputation, it would be great for your students to try to pinpoint exactly why it is that they have a good reputation. Say it's because their business has been running for 25 years, so they've got a really good reputation locally, and they get more customers through word of mouth, for example. The more information they can gather about their competitors, the easier it will be to figure out how they can beat them. So after your students have answered these questions about their competitors, the next step will be to analyze the results and work out their competitive advantage. So once again, I'd like to ask you, could anyone help me define, do you know what competitive advantage is? If you do, how would you put it in your own words? What is competitive advantage? Please do, again, write your comments in the chat box now. Okay, so we've got a few interesting answers so far. Manoj says it's to promote your one. Benika has commented when the price is lower than your product. And Nitin says, giving something extra than your competitors. Great. And Swastika has added factors that allow a company to produce goods or services better or more cheaply than its rivals. Great answers. Thanks so much, everyone, for sharing your comments. So the way that I would define it is competitive advantage is the factors which set your business apart from the other ones selling the same or a similar product or service to you. So in short, it is what makes you better than your opponents. And now that your students have gathered all this information about their competitors, they can work out what their competitive advantage will be. So how they will set themselves apart from each competitor now and in the future. And your students may discover when they're reviewing their competitor analysis table that they will be competing with each of their main competitors on different factors. So for example, they could be competing on price with first competitor and on the range of products with the second competitor. Or it could be one single factor that will make them stand out from all of the competitors they analysed, say for example, because their product or service is completely unique and unlike anything already on the market. So that brings us to the end of this part of the webinar on competitor analysis, nearly. So we have time now for a quick Q&A before we'll do an activity in groups to wrap up this section of the webinar on competitor analysis. So if you have any questions about anything that we've covered so far, please do write them in the chat box now, and my colleague Susanna will answer them for you. So
while we wait, India, for any questions, there were some really great definitions of competitive advantage. Slindile was saying competitive advantage is having one thing that makes your customers choose you instead of your competitor, which I thought was a really nice, like, succinct answer. Olafunki said putting your business in a better business position than your competitors. Manoj is how to create uniqueness in our business. And Kalpana was saying try to give new items so people are attracted to your business, which are like really, and Cynthia was saying competitive advantage is simply where your business has a better service or product. So some really, really great feedback and comments there. And yeah, if anyone has any questions, I really like it. Valborna's just said Q&A is quality and analysis. I like that. It's fantastic. So yeah. Oh wow, Nitin has said how to maintain healthy competition. We're going to go on to, well, in a minute after a particular activity, we're going to look at the unique selling point and SWOT analysis. And I think there'll be things there that will help you to see how you can identify where you can kind of improve and maintain that kind of healthy advantage over your competitors. So that's quite a big topic. And then during lockdown, how to encourage children to participate and start a business. Gosh, that's a big one. So would you say, India, that like they could be involved in School Enterprise Challenge? And trying to think, there's lots of, like, all of the activities that we are doing on the Zoom can be adapted for kind of to be delivered over Zoom with your learners, or over Google Classrooms, or Microsoft Teams. Like, all of these things you could do in that way. And there are certainly activities that I think the next activities we're going to talk about how you can deliver them. Like, you know, all of the activities can be adapted for kind of digital online learning is what I would say. I think if I went into how to do all of them now, it would take a really long time. So I don't really want to do that. But if you want more information, you can always email us and we can share with you our School Enterprise Challenge guides, and you could see how you can share them on WhatsApp or Zoom. It depends obviously on your kind of connectivity with your learners. I know in some countries teachers don't have any connectivity at all, so it would be much more difficult. So yeah, not sure if that's answered your question. And then Verinda said, how can students promote business during lockdown? We're not supposed to step outside of the house. So I think, again, I think you could use social media there to promote your business. You don't need to do things in person. Yeah, so that's kind of one way. And I know there are certain businesses here in South Africa where they're promoting on social media, then the courier comes and collects and then delivers straight to the doors. So people don't have to meet and go to like a market or a shop or anything. So just, I think, would require some kind of thinking a little bit differently about what is possible in the situation. So yeah, I'm not sure if I think the questions you've been asking are huge questions. They're really big questions that we could spend whole sessions on. So I don't know if I've done a particularly good job of answering those questions.
You have, absolutely, Susanna. I would just add, yeah, great questions that have been raised. But as Susanna said, it does sort of depend on the type of school business you're running, obviously the lockdown restrictions where you are, the age of the students, how you're keeping in touch with them while your school is shut, and so on. So every situation is unique, and you're always welcome to email us at info@schoolenterprisechallenge.org, and we can help to respond tailored to your situation. But also for those of you that have registered and are taking part in the School Enterprise Challenge this year, the WhatsApp groups that you're in with other teachers are a great place to ask these questions and to find out how other teachers and school business teams are managing the situation, and to share ideas and experiences. So I would add that recommendation too.
Yeah, and then there is another very interesting question from Nantabara Stephen, who is saying that the quality of their products is not as good as their competitors, and that's so their quality standards mean they can't compete with their competitors. So I think there were a couple of webinars that we did a few weeks ago on problem solving. In particular, there was the 5 whys activity, which really got to the heart of looking at why is something a particular problem. So in this case, why is the quality standards not good enough? So in that situation, I would suggest maybe really looking more in depth at what the problem is and why the quality is not good, to find out solutions of ways that you could increase that quality or maybe compete with competitors in a different way. So yeah, but I think maybe we should move on, and there'll be opportunities to ask questions after the next one as well.
Great. Thanks, Susanna. Okay, so let us move on to the activity that I mentioned just before. And we'll do this activity to wrap up and reflect on what we've covered in the competitor analysis section. So to do this, we're going to be using Breakout Rooms. Those of you that have been to the last couple of webinars will be familiar with them. In case not, it is a way that we can split this larger group into smaller groups for group work. So in a moment, I'm going to be randomly splitting you into smaller groups. When I open the breakout rooms, you should no longer have to click on the button to say join breakout room, but you'll just be moved there automatically. And when you are in your breakout room, please remember to turn on your microphone and your video as well if you can. I thought I had another slide, but I don't. Okay, so let me explain what the activity is going to be. I'm going to put you in your small groups, and then I'm going to give you 3 minutes to discuss what do you think McDonald's unique selling point is. So in other words, what do you think makes McDonald's stand out from its competitors? You may not like McDonald's or go to McDonald's, but that doesn't matter. We'll just use it as an example to think through the concept of a unique selling point and what factors McDonald's has that makes it stand out from its competitors. So I'm going to open the breakout rooms in just a moment, and I'll give you 3 minutes to discuss that in your small groups. And afterwards, I will invite one of you to feed back to the rest of the room by raising your hand. So have a think as you're discussing if you'd like to feedback afterwards. Okay, welcome back everybody. How was that? I went to help out in one of the rooms and I had a great conversation. But if anybody would like to just briefly feed back to the rest of the group on what you came up with, then feel free to click the raise hand button and I will invite you to turn on your microphone and share with the rest of the group. Vrinda says you came across 4 to 5 USPs. Great. I think let us leave it there then, since we don't have too much more time left and we've got lots to get through. But do feel free to share in the chat box what you came up with. Okay, so as I mentioned at the beginning of this webinar, there are really 3 parts to market research: your customers, your competitors, and you, your business. So now we're going to turn our attention to this 3rd and final part: your business's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, which will complement everything that your students have learned so far about how to meet the needs of their customers and beat their competitors. So a SWOT analysis is a super useful tool because it will help you to build on what you do well, to address what you're lacking, to minimize risks and threats, and to take the greatest possible advantage of your chances for success. And it is easy to carry out. So as the acronym suggests, all your students need to do really is to think about what their strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats are, considering all the information that they have gathered so far from their empathic interviews, from their market research and competitor analysis, and to consider how they could then overcome their weaknesses and threats. So the key thing for your students to understand, which sometimes trips people up at the beginning, is that strengths and weaknesses are internal to your business and in the present, whereas opportunities and threats are external factors in the future. So pay close attention to that, because we are about to play a game where I will give you some examples and you will tell me whether you think they are a strength, a weakness, an opportunity, or a threat. So to play this game, you are going to need to annotate the screen. And I've got some screenshots to show you how to access the annotate function. So if you're watching this webinar on a computer, you need to click on View Options and then Annotate, and then you can click on Stamps and choose the icon that you want to use, like a tick, for example. So View Options, Annotate, and then Stamps if you're watching on a computer. If you are watching on your phone, then you will need to click the blue and white pen, which is on the bottom left-hand side of your phone screen, and then click on Color, and then click where you want to place your mark on the screen. So have a look for that now. And in this game, we are going to be practicing completing a simple SWOT analysis together. So a phrase is going to appear on screen, and I would like you to use the annotate function to mark which box you think it fits in. Is it a strength? Is it a weakness? Is it an opportunity? Or is it a threat?
Sorry, I'm just playing with that. I just put some ticks on
Amazing.
the screen. So basically, the annotate function allows everyone to draw on the screen. Which is really, really, really cool. And we just thought this was a fun thing to introduce you to. Obviously, we've got the topic of, yeah, I can see you all drawing now and practicing. It's brilliant. But it just is a nice, maybe if you're doing some online learning with your learners and you've not done this before, it's just another kind of interactive thing that you can do. So basically annotate is to help you to draw on the screen, and everyone can draw. And then we can clear all your drawings, and we can start again in a minute. So maybe we can just say, like, everyone pause drawing. I'll clear the screen, and India, you can do the first question.
Okay, glad that you've all figured out how to do it though. So Susanna's going to clear what you've drawn if everybody waits for a moment. So the first phrase is, we are very good at speaking in public and selling to people. So put your tick wherever you think it is: strength, weakness, opportunity, or threat. Everyone's going for the same one so far.
And then Mr. President, I'm wrong a pen.
Okay, looks like most people have voted, so let us see what the answer is. Okay, we've got a couple of people saying opportunities, but most people are saying strength. And the answer is a strength. Well done. So vast majority have got it right first time. Susanna is now going to clear your ticks, and we'll have a look at the next one. So the next phrase is, the chickens may get sick. Is that a strength, a weakness, an opportunity, or a threat? Once again, most people are going for the same thing. Most people are saying it's a threat. One person says it's a weakness. Just give you another couple of moments to finish voting. With some very interesting marks on the screen. Okay, you're a bit more divided this time. Lots of votes already, so let's have a look at the answer. It is a threat because it's a negative external factor which could affect your business, but it hasn't happened yet. Okay, the next phrase is, we do not know how to help the chickens if they get sick. What is that? A strength, a weakness, an opportunity, or threat? Okay, you're getting quicker at this. Most people are saying it's a weakness. A couple of people think it's a threat. One big tick for strength. And the answer is amazing. Most of you have got it right. It is a weakness because it's a knowledge and skills that you lack within your team. Very good so far. Okay, next. We can use the school shed for free to house the chickens. Is it a strength, weakness, opportunity, or threat? Okay, so most people have said opportunity so far. Some people are saying strength. Bit more divided on this one. I'll give you another moment or two and then I will show you the answer. Okay, let's leave it there. The answer is, it's a strength. So that one is a bit tricky, I can see, but the school shed is a resource that you already have available to your team, so it counts as a strength. The next one is, our school is close to the town, so we can sell our chickens at the market. Strength, weakness, opportunity, or threat? Votes coming in thick and fast. Most of you are saying opportunity. We've got a few votes for strengths. And the answer is opportunity. Your school is close to the town, so it's something that you could take advantage of in the future when you're ready to sell your chickens. You could go to the market. And a final one today is, our competitors can do deliveries because they have a car. Is that a strength, a weakness, an opportunity, or a threat? cast your final votes now. Okay, you're a bit more divided on this one. We've got votes in all 4 boxes. Most of you think it's a threat. Quite a few of you think it's a weakness. Some think it's a strength or an opportunity. Okay, let us leave that one there and reveal the answer. The answer is, it's a threat. I'm not sure if you might have misread it, but it was a tricky one. Your competitors can do deliveries because they have a car, so it's a threat. In this example, we assume that you don't have a car, so the threat is that your customers may choose to buy from your competitors instead of you. So that was great fun. I hope you enjoyed it. And as Susanna said, for those of you that are using Zoom to keep in touch with your students, hopefully you can take advantage of this annotate function as a way to play interactive games and do activities together in future. So moving on now to how to actually carry out a SWOT analysis. So instead of just having a class discussion and asking your students what they think their business's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats are, a really nice way to carry out this activity a little bit differently and get all of your students involved is with a gallery walk. So a gallery walk is where your students walk around the classroom and they essentially have a discussion as a class with their pens. So it's not group work, it's an individual activity where the students do the talking with their pens. So what you will do is start by explaining to your students what a SWOT analysis is, remembering to mention that strengths and weaknesses are internal and in the present, whereas opportunities and threats are external and in the future. And do encourage your students to be completely honest with themselves when they're thinking about their weaknesses and threats, because the first step to overcoming your shortcomings is to recognize them. So to carry out this activity, you will stick a piece of big paper on the 4 walls of your classroom. You'll have 1 piece of paper for strengths, 1 for weaknesses, 1 for opportunities, and 1 for threats. And if you can't stick them on the walls, then you can place them on 4 tables in different corners of the room. And as Susanna mentioned earlier, you can also adapt all of these activities to do them online in a similar way as we just did with that annotating game. So at the top of each paper, I'd like you to write these questions to prompt your students' thinking. So on the piece of paper for where your students are going to write down what strengths they have, you can ask them to think about what advantages do you have? What does your team, what do you do best? What resources have you already got? And what is your unique selling point? In other words, what do you have that your competitors don't? Then for the weaknesses section, the questions to think about are, what could your team improve on? What would others see as your weakness? Why might people not buy from you? Then for opportunities, have a think about what opportunities does your location provide? Are there any local events? Are there any changes in your area of people, lifestyles, trends, buying habits to be aware of and take advantage of? And how could you use technology to help your business? Those are all questions to get your students thinking about opportunities. And finally, for threats, some prompt questions to prompt your students' thinking could be, what problems might you face in the future? What are your competitors doing now, and how are they planning to develop or expand their business? Do you have all the money you need? And could any of your weaknesses threaten your business? So you'll give your students 10 minutes to walk around the classroom and note down their answers on these 4 pieces of flip chart paper. And at each piece of paper, they should write down their answers to at least 2 of these questions. And then in addition to writing, they can be reading the thoughts and comments from their classmates as they're walking around and adding to their answers. It's just quite a nice different way to get all of your students involved instead of having a class discussion for a change. And then once the 10 minutes is up and everyone has jotted down their ideas, then you can review as a class what your students have come up with in each of the 4 areas. And you can take this then a step further by analysing your SWOT chart. So thinking about how can you use your strengths to take advantage of the opportunities which you identified and to avoid the threats you identified? And how can you minimize your weaknesses using the opportunities you identified? And how can you minimize your weaknesses to avoid the threats you identified? So I wanted to show you this real example from the students at St. Mark's Senior Secondary Public School in India. And they started selling cloth bags made out of scrap cloth. And then they diversified into cushion covers, table covers, and napkins. So this on screen is an extract of their SWOT analysis. So when they analysed the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities and threats which they first thought of, they realised that diversifying to a wider number of products would address some of the weaknesses and threats to their business. So they had a limited range of products, and so they faced the threat that customers would only buy from them once and then not come back and buy again and again. So they figured out at the business plan stage that if they diversified to a wider number of products, then that would help them to avoid that risk before it became a real problem. They also identified that there were opportunities to expand their customer base by capitalizing on a change in law around the use of plastic bags, because the Delhi government had put a ban on the use of plastic bags. So it put them in a great position with their cloth bags, and they decided to plan their promotions and their marketing efforts to target the customers who would be switching from plastic to cloth bags as a result of the change in the law. Those are just a couple of takeaways, but as you can see, there's lots of opportunity to think about how you can use your strengths to take advantage of your opportunities, to avoid threats, and equally to minimize your weaknesses using the opportunities you identify, and to avoid the threats. So all of these are interrelated factors, and doing this analysis is a great opportunity to strengthen your business strategy. So there you have it. That is briefly how you can analyze your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats to understand how to overcome any challenges that you may face, considering both your own weaknesses and external threats. And everything that your students will identify about their strengths and opportunities will be so valuable when it comes to marketing their business and convincing customers to buy from them, as this example from St. Mark's shows. That does bring us pretty much to the end of today's webinar, but we have time to end with a quick Q&A before we do a little reflection in groups, if you have time to stick around for another 5 minutes. So please let me know if you have any questions in the chat box, and Susanna and I will be happy to answer them for you.
Thanks, India. I just wanted to share one thing. So I think in our webinars, we are obviously doing all this kind of content around developing entrepreneurial mindset and sharing tools that you can do with your learners. But I hope also some of the techniques that we're using you know, in terms of the poll, in terms of the game that we created with the annotate and the breakout rooms, are also things that will help you as educators, that you could possibly, you know, include in your lessons if you're using online learning at the moment. And with that in mind, the game that we created with the SWOT, where India had one slide and there were things appearing and then they moved. If you want to find out how to do that, there's a video online called Kinetic Typology in PowerPoint, and that will show you how you can use animations and how you can make things go in and out and fade and stuff, if you wanted to kind of create games or something that you could use online with your learners. And oh gosh, we've got questions now. How do you, and Manoj, how do you change threats and weaknesses into opportunities and strengths? What a fantastic question. I love that. I think that's such a nice way to look at it. It's like your threats and your weaknesses could actually be your opportunities and threats. I mean, sorry, your threats and weaknesses could actually be opportunities. So thank you, India, for pulling that one up. So there's some interesting weaknesses here and some interesting threats. So obviously it will depend on what your business is, about how you would do that. So I'm not going to be able to give you one answer at all just that would solve everything. But I think it's also about just using your kind of creative thinking skills and looking at things differently. So threats here is, you know, our business may become repetitive and lose its charm. Well, how could you flip that question and say, well, how can we make sure that our business is innovative and exciting for people and has lots of different products that they're going to always want? Will help you to think differently about that problem. So I think, yeah, that would be kind of one suggestion, is to really flip the threat and the weakness into something positive and reframe it and help to stimulate that alternative thinking. Yeah, it's hard to, I can't go into too much detail on that one, unless, India, you wanted to add anything.
No, I think you've explained it perfectly. That's exactly how I would go about it too, and indeed how these students have flipped their weaknesses and threats on their head. But you're quite right, it's about reframing it and turning your kind of negative weaknesses and threats into positive opportunities to grow your business and make it successful.
Definitely. And then Nitin said, we have time constraints for taking meetings of students. Oh, I think every single school has this problem. So I think there are lots of interesting tools and techniques you can use when having meetings. I would suggest some things around making sure that the meetings are really effective and quick and get to the heart of it. There are techniques called Scrum meetings, where people come and you might have, you know, you could have 10 minutes. You could say, we've got 10 minutes and we want to cover X, Y, Z. What are people's solutions or points that they want to discuss on that? So you could break down your meetings into much smaller, bite-sized, tiny chunks. And so, yeah, I would Google Scrum meetings as a technique, have the meeting standing up like during a break time. Yeah, there's a lot of different techniques that can be used. I don't know if you've got any other ones, India.
No, I think once again, though, it depends on how you're connecting with your students. Like, it might not be possible to be seeing each other face to face or even on video, but like now more than ever, we need to adapt and find different ways to use things like shared Google Docs or WhatsApp to communicate.
That's true. That you actually don't have to be even in person.
In a meeting, yeah.
Yeah, because we do lots. I mean, in Teach Men to Fish, most of our meetings are actually held like using Zoom or Skype or WhatsApp or something.
And I'll give you maybe 3 or 4 minutes, something like that. And here are some questions that we thought you might like to chat about. So, what did you find new or most interesting about today's session? What surprised you? Are these tools something that you plan to use in your classroom, and why or why not? I know lots of you have taken part in SEC before, so you might have already done a competitor analysis and SWOT analysis with your students. If so, you might like to share your experience in your little group. So I will open the breakout rooms now for about 3 minutes, and then I'll bring you back to the main room just to say some final goodbye. Welcome back, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the chance to reflect in your little groups. As I mentioned, I'm afraid that's all we've got time for today. But I have included at the end of the slides a link to a couple of useful resources. There's the video on competitor analysis and SWOT analysis, which we filmed at a school in Uganda. So you can see how the tools that we've spoken about today work in action. And I also wanted to draw your attention to an activity which is available on the SEC website called the Super SWOT analysis. And it introduces students to SWOT analysis by doing one for their favorite superhero before they do one for their business. So it's quite a nice way to introduce students to the tool. And you can also catch up with the earlier webinars on YouTube. In particular, take a look at webinar number 3 on supporting students to become problem solvers, if you haven't already seen it, because as Susanna's mentioned earlier, it includes lots of great techniques and tools which will help your students to reframe weaknesses and threats and to turn them into positive strengths and opportunities. As always, please do make sure to follow us on social media to keep up to date with our news. The next and final webinar, which we will be running in this series, is on a super important topic. It is financial planning and how to make it fun and understandable for your learners. It's happening next Thursday, the 6th of August. And the following Tuesday, the 11th of August, same time, 3 p.m. in the UK. So make sure to register to join us and spread the word to other teachers at your school or other schools. We would love to see as many of you there as possible. And finally, please remember, if you're not already taking part in the School Enterprise Challenge, you can find out everything you need to know and register for free on our website, www.schoolenterprisechallenge.org. And as promised, you can get your certificate of attendance for today's session by filling in this short survey. Susanna has very kindly already posted it in the chat box. You won't be able to click on screen where it says click here to take survey during this session. So please follow the link that Susanna has just posted in the chat box. I will also be sharing this with you, all the slides and the link to the survey, by email by tomorrow midday in the UK. So that's all from me and Susanna today. Thank you so much for joining and for interacting. It's been a real pleasure to have you all here, and we'll just stay for a couple more minutes to answer any last questions you might